Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about albums that I love. If 20-minute deep dive episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, both here on my channel as well as over on my Instagram. I hope your day is going better than mine, because late last night, my entire closet just collapsed in on itself. The shelf and the clothing rod just fell right out of the wall. Everything is in pieces on the other side of the room. I said it was a problem for future me to deal with, and future Abby still doesn't want to deal with it. Somebody help me. A quick note before we get started. Next week's episode of Vinyl Monday is going to be my last for 2022. I'm going to be taking a week off for the holidays and spending time with my family. You might see an upload from me in the meantime. It'd be really cool to do a year-end vinyl collection update, but for sure, Vinyl Monday will be on a break after the December 19th episode and coming back January 2nd. So I usually make a guessing game out of what album I'm going to be covering next on this series. If you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. I post little behind the scenes things over there, I post memes, and sometimes I run polls. A little while back, I found a gap in my schedule for this month, so I let you guys pick 2 episodes to fill that space before I break for the new year. And the first album you picked was Odessey and Oracle by the Zombies. Also, before we really get into Odessey and Oracle, I'm calling this episode Vinyl Monday Remastered because I first covered this album back when Vinyl Monday was only 30-second clips exclusive to my Instagram. It's since expanded to 60 seconds, then expanded to YouTube. The first 10 episodes of this season were actually the first 10 episodes I ever covered on Vinyl Monday, the old format. It was a year since I'd last visited those albums, and I figured they deserved a full-length video. It hasn't quite been a year since I last covered Odessey, so consider this the remastered version. So let's take the plastic off. And I am so excited to show you guys this copy of Odessey and Oracle because this is one of the relatively few color pressings I have in my collection. This was the Newbury Comics limited edition press in this gorgeous clear vinyl with rainbow splatter. I think it complements this album art beautifully. And it was such a find. I picked this one up at a Newbury location off the highway somewhere in New Hampshire, like a year after this pressing had sold out online. That store also had the mono press of Axis Bold as Love in gorgeous solid orange vinyl. I didn't buy that one, and I've been literally kicking myself ever since, but I do have this one. For a myriad of reasons that I will be covering in this video, I encourage you to seek out the mono mix of Odessey and Oracle. If you have a keen eye, you might have noticed that the Odessey in Odessey and Oracle is spelled Odyssey, like the city Odessa, with an extra E thrown in there. Well, this title was a complete accident. This album art was painted by friend of the band Terry Quirk, and he misspelled Odessey when he was painting the art. The Zombies didn't have the funds to recommission this art with the correct spelling of Odessey, plus the extra E in there just looked cool. So they kept it, retitled the album that way, and it's been Odessey and Oracle ever since. The original US runs of this album didn't have this beautiful full painting as the album art. They just had this little square right here with a blue border around it, and that is a shame. This art is psychedelic perfection. For their whole history, the Zombies have had a constantly rotating lineup, and the lineup on Odessey and Oracle goes as follows. I'm going to be reading these from my notes because it gets really confusing with who has the lead vocals and where, so I'm just going to go ahead and read this off for you. We have Colin Blunstone on lead vocals, Rod Argent on keys, backing vocals, the lead vocals on I Want Her, She Wants Me, and co-lead vocals on A Rose for Emily, Brief Candles, and Hung Up on a Dream. We have Paul Atkinson on guitar and backing vocals, Chris White on bass, backing vocals, lead vocals on Butcher's Tale, and co-lead vocals with Rod on Brief Candles, and Hugh Grundy on drums and backing vocals. This record was produced by Ken Jones and engineered by Jeff Emmerich and Peter Vince. Jeff engineered Sgt. Pepper's and Abbey Road. I think I mentioned him briefly in the Sgt. Pepper's video. If I didn't, this is his shout out. So if you ask me, the Zombies have one of the most fascinating histories of any pop group in the 60s. At this point in their history, in 1967, the Zombies are really struggling to keep morale up after being out of luck for the past 2 years. Of all the material they'd recorded, they only had 2 radio hits. They had She's Not There in 64 and a lesser hit in 65, Tell Her No. Tell Her No is one of my favorite Zombies songs, by the way. It was tough being a straight-up pop group in the late 60s. Psychedelia was ruling the world in 1967. Public interest is shifting from pop to psych rock as the counterculture is really picking up steam in the United States. So pop groups on both sides of the pond followed this trend. You had the Kinks putting out Waterloo Sunset and the Beach Boys putting out Good Vibrations. And some of these acts are really finding their footing within psych. In my opinion, Donovan really came into his own when he started incorporating those psych elements and Eastern instrumentation into his folk sound. Then you have this huge resurgence in popularity of blues and other standards. A lot of psych rock groups are making the standards into their signature songs. You have Jimi Hendrix popularizing Hey Joe, and Cream does it with Born Under a Bad Sign, and later Crossroads, and so many other songs. Clapton was just blues, blues, blues all the way, psych or not. And sure, you could be a straight-up bubblegum pop group in the 60s, but if you're sounding like this, when this was all the rage, you might have a problem selling your records. The Zombies already had the standards thing down. Their first record was half originals and half standards, but in order to keep up with the trends in pop music, the Zombies were going to have to change their sound. There's just one problem. Psych music is pretty elaborate, so that can cost a lot to produce. At the time of its release, Sgt. Pepper's was the most expensive album ever made. The Zombies jump ship from Decca to CBS in hopes of finally snagging that hit record and revitalizing their career. Odessey was recorded at EMI Studios, now known as Abbey Road Studios, between June and November of 1967. Their budget was so tight that they couldn't hire any session musicians to fill out their arrangements, so what they would normally fill up with other instruments, they had to fill with a mellotron. We're going to be getting to the story of this mellotron pretty soon. Having a small recording budget definitely isn't an issue nowadays. You can make amazing records from the comfort of your bedroom. Or you can make a 60s and 70s retrospective series based on music in your own vinyl collection and build a small but devoted and super chill cult following from the comfort of your bedroom. But with making a record in the 60s and the way the music industry was back then, lack of funding was a big obstacle to overcome. I think of how Chaz Chandler had to open a line of credit in order for Are You Experienced to be finished. Thankfully, they made back all of their money, seeing as it's Jimi fucking Hendrix, but the Zombies didn't really have a Chaz Chandler while recording. But I guess amidst the Zombies' money woes, the universe was looking out for them. According to Rod Argent, the mellotron they used on Odessey and Oracle was left behind by John Lennon after Sgt. Pepper's recording. And they definitely used the same 4-track machine that Jeff Emmerich had just used on Sgt. Pepper's. Now, what I'm about to tell you is, I'm not joking when I say this, it's one of the most incredible things I've learned through researching for a Vinyl Monday. In order to maximize the time they had in the studio, there were no Odessey outtakes. Almost no material went unused. The only things cut were mellotron and cello parts from A Rose for Emily. Everything you hear is an assembly of all of the best parts of every single take they recorded. To put this into perspective, Simon and Garfunkel's Bookends was released a couple of weeks before this record, right? And there is an entire alternate album of just Bookends outtakes. We can't do that with Odessey and Oracle because there are none. That is so cool. And they were able to execute this really tall order because the Zombies were very well rehearsed going into the studio. They had just come off of a grueling tour schedule and they were doing as many as 7 gigs a night. Odessey was first mixed in mono and handed in to CBS as a finished product, but this was 1968 and stereo was all the rage. Through 66 and 67, labels didn't really care so much about their stereo mixes. Stereo was very much still seen as a novelty, and that's why you hear all of that ridiculous panning on stuff like Are You Experienced? It's because they were literally just fucking around. But in the time between recording and releasing Odessey, labels had started to take their stereo mixes seriously. CBS demanded a stereo mix of Odessey, but the band had already spent their entire budget on recording, so Rod and Chris paid out of pocket to mix a stereo Odessey themselves. Stereo mixing went fine, except for This Will Be Our Year. This Will Be Our Year was a bitch to mix. It was such a bitch to mix because Ken Jones had dubbed the horn part right onto the mono mix and not on the multi-track. So instead of going back to the multi-track and building their stereo mix from there, Rod and Chris had to do that whole re-channeled for stereo nonsense. That's why there aren't any horns on the stereo This Will Be Our Year. This is kind of a weird quirk that I noticed. On streaming services, you have to go to Original Recordings Volume 4 to hear the true mono This Will Be Our Year with the horns in it. I don't know why it's not on any mono Odessey on streaming services. That's just really weird to me. And I hadn't heard horns This Will Be Our Year until researching for this episode. Through hell or high water, Odessey and Oracle was handed in as a finished product. And that track listing goes as follows. Opening up side 1, you have Care of Cell 44, followed by A Rose for Emily. Then is Maybe After He's Gone, followed by Beechwood Park, then Brief Candles, and side A closes with Hung Up on a Dream. Side 2 opens with Changes, followed by I Want Her, She Wants Me. Then This Will Be Our Year, followed by Butcher's Tale with the subtitle Western Front 1914. Then comes Friends of Mine, and the album closes with Time of the Season. Odessey and Oracle was finally released in April of 1968. This album only got a US release because of early Odessey advocate Al Kooper. He lobbied really hard to the Columbia execs to get Odessey a US release. Al went to bat for this album when the band themselves couldn't. Wait, why couldn't the Zombies go to bat for Odessey? Yeah, the band had already broken up by the time this record came out. While the Zombies were recording Odessey, they were releasing its material as singles. They put out Care of Cell 44, Friends of Mine, Butcher's Tale, and Time of the Season, all in hopes of at least one of them striking big. And none of them did. The guys were disenchanted by it all, so they agreed that once Odessey was done, they were all calling it quits, because what did it matter? Nobody was going to hear this thing anyway. But the exact opposite happened. It did take a while. Odessey did sell poorly upon its release, but over the next year, the record slowly builds a cult following, and in 1969, a whole year after Odessey and Oracle's release, Time of the Season becomes a big radio hit. British radio DJ Kenny Everett was a big reason Odessey and Oracle ever gained any traction in the UK. He played songs from this record all the time on his show. He played A Rose for Emily a lot, and he had the Zombies on the show for an interview, as the band was actively falling apart. Thank you to Bestie Jack across the pond for letting me in on that information. He always knows the funny little UK and Ireland radio trivia bits that I totally wouldn't know because I am a dumb American. Hey, we haven't had that joke on the show in a while! Like the other Baroque pop great, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Hi, this is... No. That was Carl and the Passions. This is Pet Sounds. Like the other Baroque pop great, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, Odessey and Oracle has become a massively influential record amongst fellow musicians. Ross Fetterman, the drummer of Tally Hall, this is their first record, Marvin's, he cited Odessey as a big influence in an interview not too long ago. If you listen to Tally Hall's music, you'll hear how they incorporated some of the zanier elements of Baroque pop in with their 2000s pop rock sound to create something delightfully unique. You hear it the most on their second record, Good and Evil. I don't have Good and Evil yet, but I'm gonna let you in on something. Psst. The first ever repress of Good and Evil is available for pre-order now. I got mine, you should totally get it. I'm not being paid to say this, I just think Tally Hall is really cool. Basically, if you like Odessey, seek out Good and Evil. So, what do I think of Odessey and Oracle? Going in, I have wonderful memories with this album. This record was the soundtrack of many a Saturday outing with my college friends. This photo I have from the first time I wore my Master of Reality dress out. We listened to Odessey and Oracle on the way to this thrift store. I was so excited to revisit this album. I had Hung Up on a Dream stuck in my head for a week beforehand. Musically, this thing has Pet Sounds written all over it. I mention this little nugget of information every time Pet Sounds comes up on my channel, and I'm gonna mention it again. Pet Sounds kicked off a lot better in the UK than it did in the US. Musicians were especially receptive to it. Paul McCartney listened to Pet Sounds and was so blown away that he got to working on Sgt. Pepper's. Other musicians see Odessey and Oracle the same way. God, this might be the saddest record I've covered on this series so far. This is a prime example of happy music, sad lyrics. If you pay too much attention, this can get a little emotionally devastating. Carousel 44 has those jangly keys and peppy backing vocals, but the lyrics are about writing to a lover in jail and naively thinking that everything is gonna go back to the way it was before when that lover comes home. The narrator of Maybe After He's Gone is in denial over his lover belonging to someone else and stringing them both along for entertainment. Maybe after he's gone, she'll come back and love me again. Ouch. This Will Be Our Year is hopeful, but it's hopeful in the way that the original Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas is hopeful. We are in dire straits, but we are muddling along because we have to. Side note, the original Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas will always be superior. Judy Garland is God. And there's themes of unrequited love, love triangles, and lack of love all over this thing. You have A Rose for Emily, Maybe After He's Gone, Brief Candles. And by the time things are finally looking up and groovy, the record is just over. Like, wait, it's over? That's it? No happy ending? No, we just have to infer one. And by Odessey being a devastatingly sad record, it's also got pet sounds written all over it. Considering all the strife the Zombies were going through leading up to and through the recording of this album, it's no wonder why the lyrics are so bleak. The Beatles' influence is also very real. I feel like every other line could become, I read the news today, oh boy, with just the slightest nudge. I think it's most apparent on Hung Up on a Dream. Speaking of the Beatles, if Rod is to be believed, thank God John Lennon left that Mellotron at Abbey Road. Before I'd done much research on Odessey and Oracle, I assumed that the Zombies had had a huge team of session musicians, a la the Wrecking Crew, to fill out these arrangements. But they didn't. It was literally just them. That's a testament to 1, really good arrangements, and 2, ingenuity. You can make a fantastic record if you know how to stretch what you've got all the way to its very limits. The keys carry this record. The string sound on Carousel 44 and Brief Candles, the organ sound on Beechwood Park, they fill out the songs where other instrumentation normally would. John Lennon, Al Kooper, and Kenny Everett are the 3 guardian angels of Odessey and Oracle. John for leaving his Mellotron behind, Al for lobbying hard for a US Odessey release, and Kenny for giving this record airplay in the UK. Knowing what I know now about Odessey's production, now I can't help but hear how sparse things are. Now I notice a lot more negative space in the production, especially with songs like Butcher's Tale and Friends of Mine. They're very open. But it's those little things snuck in that make this record so special. It's the cowbell in Carousel 44, the very slight delay and tremolo effect on the guitar in Beechwood Park. It's the fade out at the end of Brief Candles, the recorder on Hung Up on a Dream, the bongos on Changes, the little at the end of Friends of Mine transitioning into Time of the Season. I could go on, but then we'd be here for an hour. Oh God, I don't want to know how long this video is going to be. I have 8 pages of notes here. Changes is underrated as hell. It is chamber pop gold. The use of bongos is, again, something that the Beach Boys picked up from Exotica music, but here it keeps the song driving and keeps the song from getting stiff. Brief Candles, also underrated as hell. I am devastated that the horns on This Will Be Our Year couldn't make it into the stereo mix. They do so much for warming up and filling out the song. Again, seek the mono mix of Odessey out, if for nothing but This Will Be Our Year. The arrangements of this collection of songs are bar none. The instrumentation is meticulously put together, and it almost sounds like vocal harmonies. That lead guitar part on Hung Up on a Dream, it sounds like it could absolutely be a vocal ad-lib solo. If you ask me, Hung Up on a Dream is the best song on this record. I know Time of the Season gets all the praise, and it's the star of the show and whatever, but Hung Up on a Dream is a perfect 60s pop song. It gives good vibrations, and God only knows a run for their money. The vocal harmonies on this record don't just accent the lead vocals, which they do very well, of course. They take on a life of their own. This is a very animated record, and the lyrics are poetry. Odessey and Oracle is everything a 60s pop album should be. All things considered, it is a goddamn miracle we ever got Odessey and Oracle. The hardest times truly reap the richest results, and man, what a treasure Odessey and Oracle is. My personal favorites are Care of Cell 44, Beechwood Park, Brief Candles, Hung Up on a Dream, Changes, and Time of the Season. If you want to keep up with the faves, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description of all of my favorite songs from every Vinyl Monday I've ever covered. And that is it. That is Odessey and Oracle by the Zombies. I learned so much putting this video together for you guys. And do a deep dive into the Zombies. They're one of my favorite groups from the 60s, and a lot of that is because of this record. But enough about what I think about Odessey and Oracle. What do you think? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about the albums that I love. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!